Chinese motorcycles are being quietly locked out of Western markets right now, not with outright bans. Instead, regulations and costs are designed to make entry nearly impossible. This is not because they are dangerous or because they are poorly made. They are simply too good and too cheap, and that threatens the margins the system relies on. I'm breaking down the real reason regulatory barriers are keeping Chinese bikes out, while riders in dozens of countries are buying them by the millions. The math is simple. Chinese manufacturers are now building bikes that approach Japanese quality across multiple segments at half the price, with better tech than European premium brands. That is not supposed to happen. The industry is using every regulatory trick in the book to keep you from finding out. Drop a comment if Chinese bikes are available in your market, or if you have hit regulatory walls trying to buy one. You are about to find out why. The official excuse is always the same: emissions, safety standards, consumer protection. It sounds reasonable until you actually look at what these regulations measure and when regulators conveniently update them. Chinese manufacturers can meet Euro 5 emission standards. They have been doing it for years in markets that actually enforce those rules. CFMoto, Benelli, QJMotor are certified for the same environmental requirements as Honda and Yamaha. The testing procedures are the same, the equipment is comparable, and the results pass certification. But here is where things get absurd. Watch what happens when Chinese bikes start improving. Suddenly, regulators discover new concerns, new testing procedures, new certification requirements that happen to cost millions and take years to navigate. It is not about safety. It is about creating expensive barriers that slow down competition. The pattern is revealing. European and Japanese bikes barely scraped by emission standards for decades. Harleys were dumping pollution without consequence. The moment Chinese manufacturers produce clean burning engines at affordable prices, suddenly new concerns emerge about environmental impact and testing procedures. I have looked at safety records from Southeast Asia, South America, and Africa, where Chinese bikes compete freely. Accident rates are comparable to Japanese brands in multiple markets. In several cases, outcomes improve when you account for Chinese bikes coming standard with anti-lock brakes and traction control that cost extra on premium brands. Reliability data from high-mileage riders shows Chinese bikes holding up well, with maintenance requirements similar to established brands. Then there is the whole mess of crash testing. Chinese manufacturers are increasingly using similar safety standards, comparable crumple zone design, and frame engineering principles as established brands. They are hiring engineers who previously worked for Japanese and European companies. The bikes are meeting international safety requirements in every market where they have gone through proper certification. But Western regulators keep moving the goalposts: new headlight standards, new brake specifications, new handlebar requirements. Each one is designed to be just expensive and complicated enough to discourage Chinese manufacturers from even trying to enter the market. The real pattern is obvious once you see it. Regulations tighten right when Chinese bikes improve enough to threaten market share. It is regulatory protection that happens to benefit existing players, whether that was the intent or not. Homologation costs, liability exposure, and dealer compliance requirements favor manufacturers already embedded in the system. We have seen this pattern in markets like Australia, where compliance costs and changing requirements can hit smaller entrants harder than established brands. Chinese bikes were gaining ground. Riders loved the value. Then new compliance requirements emerged that were incredibly expensive for smaller manufacturers to meet. The established brands had the resources and existing relationships to navigate it. Chinese competitors face significant barriers. The economic reality is clear. These regulatory frameworks create barriers that established manufacturers can navigate easily. They have the resources, the relationships, and the institutional knowledge. New entrants face costs and delays that make market entry nearly impossible. Meanwhile, riders pay premium prices for bikes that are not meaningfully safer or cleaner than the alternatives being kept out. But what this system really incentivizes is avoiding the price war that nobody in the Western dealer model can win. The math that is keeping dealership owners up at night is brutal. Chinese motorcycles sell for substantially less than comparable Japanese or European bikes cost, often dramatically so. Not because they are cutting corners, but because the entire business model is different, and Western brands built their empires on margins that cannot survive real competition. Break down actual manufacturing costs, and the picture becomes clear. Chinese factories produce at a scale that many Japanese manufacturers abandoned decades ago. They use the same CNC machines, the same quality control processes, and the same metallurgy, matching established quality. Labor costs less, factory overhead is lower, and they are not supporting bloated corporate structures in expensive countries. The real kicker is dealer markup. Legacy brands rely on layered margins across distributors and dealer networks. Manufacturer to distributor, distributor to dealer, dealer to you. That's how a bike's factory cost can multiply dramatically by the time it hits the showroom floor. Chinese manufacturers are selling direct or through leaner networks and passing the savings to riders. Look at the CFMoto 650 NK versus the Kawasaki Z650. Same engine configuration, same power output, similar weight and handling. The CFMoto costs substantially less. You're paying a significant premium for a badge and the privilege of supporting a dealer network that needs those margins to survive. Then, there's the service department. Crisis nobody wants to talk about. Dealerships don't make money selling bikes, they make money fixing bikes. That's where the profit is. Parts, markup. Labor rates, scheduled maintenance. Chinese bikes are reliable enough that dealers lose their maintenance cash cow. Riders aren't coming back every 3,000 miles for expensive services. Why can't established brands just lower their prices and compete? Because they can't. Their entire supply chain is built on those margins. Cut the price and dealers go bankrupt. Dealers go bankrupt, and there's no distribution network. No distribution network, and the whole system collapses. Japanese and European manufacturers are locked into cost structures from a different era. They've got pension obligations, union contracts, facilities in high-cost countries, and corporate headquarters with thousands of employees. You can't compete with Chinese efficiency when you're dragging that weight. The whole business model depended on motorcycles being premium lifestyle products instead of affordable transportation. You paid extra for heritage, for brand prestige, for the dream of rebellion and freedom. Chinese manufacturers looked at that and said, forget the dream. Riders want a bike that works at a price that makes sense. Watch what happens in markets where Chinese bikes compete freely. Established brands either match on price, which destroys their margins, or they lose market share. There's no third option. You can't convince riders to pay double for the same product just because your company has history. The dealer networks are already feeling it in countries where Chinese competition exists. Premium brands that used to move 50 bikes a month are now selling 20. Service bays that used to be full are empty because Chinese bikes don't break down enough to need constant attention. The revenue model that supported the entire industry for 50 years is dying. Then, there is the technology problem that makes the price gap even worse. The shock that nobody saw coming is this. In electronics and connectivity, several Chinese manufacturers are now ahead of legacy brands at equivalent price points. And that is making premium brands look like they are selling yesterday's technology at tomorrow's prices. Look at what bikes like the QJMotor SRK800 offer straight from the factory. Full-color TFT displays that make European bike screens look like calculator watches. Smartphone integration that actually works instead of the clunky systems Japanese brands charge $500 extra for. Multiple riding modes with traction control and cornering ABS that cost thousands in the options catalog on a BMW or Ducati. Chinese manufacturers are not just matching the tech, They are making it standard equipment at price points where established brands are still using analog gauges and calling it classic styling. Then there is the battery revolution that is about to embarrass every legacy manufacturer. Chinese companies spent the last decade becoming world leaders in EV technology. Chinese suppliers are a major part of the global battery supply chain. They dominate electric cars globally. Now they are applying that expertise to electric motorcycles, and the results are brutal for competition. Zero Motorcycles charges $20,000 for an electric bike with 100 miles of range. Chinese manufacturers are building bikes with similar performance for $8,000. The battery management systems are better. The charging infrastructure is more developed. The whole supply chain is optimized because they are not starting from scratch like Western brands. Why are legacy manufacturers years behind on electric? Because they are protecting their combustion engine investments. They have billions tied up in engine factories and patents and expertise that becomes worthless in an electric future. Chinese manufacturers do not have that baggage. They are building what works instead of what protects their existing business. The parts availability myth is falling apart too. Everyone assumes Chinese bikes mean waiting months for parts shipped from Asia. The reality is, some Chinese manufacturers have built surprisingly fast parts pipelines in key regions. CFMoto has distribution centers on multiple continents, and parts can arrive faster than waiting for some European brands to ship from overseas. Quality control is the same story. Modern Chinese factories use identical equipment and processes as Japanese plants, same CNC machines, same metallurgy standards, same quality inspections. The difference is, many Chinese factories are newer, with more advanced automation. Some legacy plants rely on older tooling that still works but is not cutting edge, while Chinese facilities often feature the latest manufacturing technology. The engineering talent drain is real and nobody wants to admit it. Chinese manufacturers are hiring away top designers and engineers from European brands. They are offering better pay, newer facilities, and the freedom to actually innovate instead of protecting legacy product lines. The guy who designed your favorite Kawasaki might be working for Zongshan now. I have watched Chinese bikes evolve from basic transportation to legitimate performance machines in less than a decade. That is not luck. That is systematic investment in technology and talent, while established brands coasted on reputation. Connectivity features alone make premium brands look stupid. Chinese bikes sync with your phone for navigation, music, call handling, and ride data tracking. European manufacturers charge $1,500 for connectivity packages that do less. Japanese brands are still figuring out how to add Bluetooth without the system crashing every third ride. But the real threat is not the technology Chinese manufacturers have now. It is what is happening in markets where they are actually allowed to compete and prove themselves. To be clear, the criticism of Chinese motorcycles is not completely imaginary. Some brands still struggle with long-term parts availability in smaller markets. Resale value can be weaker where dealer networks are thin. And quality consistency varies more between Chinese manufacturers than it does with established Japanese brands. These are real concerns, especially in countries where Chinese manufacturers do not yet have full support infrastructure. If you are in a rural area with one mechanic who only knows Hondas, buying a Chinese bike creates legitimate service challenges. But here's the key difference. Those problems are logistical, not engineering. They are about distribution networks and dealer training, not whether Chinese factories can build reliable motorcycles. And logistics problems get solved quickly when market demand exists and manufacturers commit resources to building proper support systems. The quality variance issue is real, but narrowing fast. The gap between top-tier Chinese manufacturers and budget brands is significant, but that is true of any market. A Hyosung is not a Suzuki either. The difference is Chinese manufacturers are improving at a rate that established brands have not matched in decades. Now let us look at what happens in markets where Chinese bikes actually compete on equal terms and have built that support infrastructure. What is happening in Southeast Asia, South America, and Africa tells you everything about why Western markets are desperate to keep Chinese bikes out. These are not theoretical scenarios. This is real market data showing what happens when Chinese motorcycles compete on equal terms. The numbers are devastating for established brands. Chinese manufacturers captured massive market share in multiple categories within just a few years of entering. Not by undercutting on price alone, but by offering better value across every metric riders actually care about. Thailand is the perfect case study. Japanese brands dominated for decades. Then Chinese manufacturers showed up with bikes that matched Japanese reliability, added better electronics, and cost substantially less. Within 3 years, brands like CFMoto and Zongshen surged into top-selling positions in key displacement classes. Riders did not choose Chinese bikes because they could not afford Japanese. They chose Chinese because the bikes were genuinely better value. The dealer network advantage is crushing competition in ways nobody predicted. Chinese brands are opening more locations than established manufacturers can afford. They are targeting smaller cities and rural areas that premium brands abandoned as unprofitable. Suddenly, riders who had to travel 200 miles to a Honda dealer have a CFMoto shop 20 miles away with better hours and faster service. Real rider testimonials from these markets destroy the cheap junk narrative completely. Satisfaction rates match or beat Japanese brands. Riders report similar reliability, better features and service experiences that actually solve problems instead of upselling unnecessary maintenance. The bikes hold up to daily use in conditions that would destroy poorly made machines. The resale value surprise is killing another myth. Everyone assumed Chinese bikes would depreciate instantly. The reality is they are holding value better than expected in markets where parts availability is good and reliability is proven. Used Chinese bikes often retain value comparably to Japanese bikes in regions with established support networks, sometimes even better than some European brands. What happened to premium manufacturers in these markets is brutal. They were forced to compete on actual value instead of heritage and marketing. BMW cannot sell a $15,000 adventure bike when a Vosges 650D SX offers similar capability for $6,000. Riders in developing markets are not paying extra for German engineering mystique when Chinese engineering works just fine. The adaptation attempts are pathetic. Japanese manufacturers tried releasing budget models to compete. Guess what? Their budget bikes cost more than Chinese premium bikes and offered fewer features. They could not compete because their entire cost structure is wrong for that market segment. European brands just retreated to the luxury segment and hoped brand loyalty would save them. It did not. Younger riders in these markets do not care that Ducati won races in the 1990s. They care that a Benelli TRK 502 gets them to work reliably and costs a third of a Multistrada. The social media effect amplified everything. Riders share real experiences globally now. Someone in Indonesia posts about their CFMoto hitting 50,000 miles without issues, and riders in Brazil see it. The information barrier that let manufacturers control the narrative is gone. Chinese bikes prove themselves in real conditions, and the whole world watches. Watch what happens when Chinese brands start their own heritage marketing. In 10 years, they will have proven track records, millions of satisfied riders, and racing victories. That is the exact foundation that established brands use to build their reputations. Except Chinese manufacturers will offer it at half the price with better technology. The inevitable outcome is already clear in open markets. Established brands either compete on value, which destroys their margins and dealer networks, or they become niche luxury products for enthusiasts willing to pay premium prices for badges and nostalgia. There is no middle ground where they maintain current market share at current profit levels. Speaking of heritage and brand loyalty, let us talk about why that is not saving anyone. The generational shift is destroying brand loyalty faster than manufacturers can adapt. Younger riders do not care that your dad rode a Honda or your grandfather swore by Harley. They care about value, features, and whether the bike actually does what they need without costing a year's salary. I watch this play out in forums and social media groups. 20-year-olds compare spec sheets and pricing. They see a Chinese bike with TFT display, riding modes, and ABS for $5,000 next to a Japanese bike with analog gauges and basic brakes for $8,000. Brand heritage means nothing when the math is that obvious. The social media effect killed the information monopoly that protected established brands. Riders in the Philippines post videos of their CFMoto hitting 100,000 kilometers. Riders in Argentina share maintenance costs, showing Chinese bikes are cheaper to own long-term. That information spreads globally and destroys the cheap junk narrative faster than any marketing campaign can rebuild it. The buy local argument falls apart under basic scrutiny. Your Yamaha is made in Thailand or Indonesia. Your Triumph is assembled in Thailand. Your KTM is built in India. The Japanese and European badges are attached to Asian manufacturing, just like Chinese brands. You are not supporting local jobs either way, so why pay double for the same origin? Buy local collapses the moment riders actually try Chinese bikes. That is why established brands fight so hard to keep them out of markets. Once you test ride a Benelli or Vosges and realize it handles like the Japanese bike beside it, brand loyalty evaporates. The mystique only works if riders never experience the alternative. The innovation gap is getting embarrassing. Established brands rest on reputation, while Chinese manufacturers push boundaries. Who is leading electric motorcycle development? Chinese companies. Who is integrating smartphone connectivity that actually works? Chinese manufacturers. Who is offering advanced rider aids as standard equipment? Not the heritage brands charging extra for every feature. What happens when Chinese brands have their own heritage in 10 years, when they have proven track records, racing victories, and millions of satisfied riders? They will use the exact playbook that built the reputations of Harley and Honda, except they will still cost half as much, with better technology. The inevitable outcome is already visible. Established brands either compete on value, which kills their business model, or they become niche luxury products for enthusiasts willing to pay premium prices for badges. The mass market belongs to whoever offers the best value, and Chinese manufacturers own that space. Bans are temporary protection that cannot last forever. Trade agreements and market pressure will eventually force Western markets to open up. When that happens, you will get better bikes at better prices, whether established manufacturers like it or not. Ask yourself, who actually benefits from keeping affordable, quality motorcycles out of your market? Not you. Not riders who want reliable transportation. It benefits manufacturers protecting profit margins and dealers protecting service revenue. Drop a comment on whether Chinese bikes are available in your country and what you have actually heard about them from people who ride them. Subscribe, because I am breaking down what actually drives prices and access in the motorcycle industry while everyone else repeats marketing talking points.